I'm Blake.
And I'm PJ.
And this is episode 16 of the Church Podcast. So in this series, we are breaking down the 20 commandments from the last episode. And what these are the 20 cultural values from our ex-church. And so we are going to be breaking down each one of these values in this little series that we're doing. So before we get into this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. And in this episode, we are breaking down commandment number 1. So this commandment is Jesus is the center. So what do you think? I guess I was thinking about it today, and
Jesus is at the center.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about how they would try to use that.
So basically, I always cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I was trying to think, and that's why I was trying to get you to say something the whole time. The only time I wanted you to cut me off and say something, you don't cut me off.
What?
It's just funny because I was like struggling to figure out the words that I was going to use, and I was waiting for you to be like, oh, and then you didn't. And I was like, help me out here.
I'm not a mind reader.
Well, usually you are.
So we're talking about the cultural values of our ex-church. Mm-hmm. Cultural values are great, and these cultural values are great.
A couple of them, I would say, are suspect. But most of them are great.
No, they're all very positive sounding. And we're going to break down how they were used as laws to manipulate and micromanage people in the organization. And so we called it the 20 Commandments because they were more like, laws written in stone.
Yeah.
Than like, oh, cool, like, look, we're identifying who we are. This is the heart of us, like.
That's what it was posed as. See, that's what I was trying to say. Okay. So the first one,
Jesus at the center, probably the most happy, positive thing you can think of.
Yeah.
I was talking to my homie, my client, and client homie, and Jesus was not at the center. Pastor were at the center.
Yeah.
And any other pastor, really.
Yeah.
Like anyone who was an authority, like honoring them was paramount. Mm-hmm. It was way more important than honoring Jesus. Because to me, which, this cultural value, this is like something in my heart, right? Mm-hmm. Since we all collaborated and agreed on these things, these were the core of who we are. We just identified these things and put words to them.
Right. And
so to me, having Jesus at the center means calling bullshit when somebody's doing something non-Christ-like. But that wasn't okay if I'm just a lowly servant and you're the pastor. Well, in this case, Jesus is not at the center, buddy. Honor is at the center.
Yeah. And
the Lord called me to be the pastor here. And I'm carrying this heavy burden.
That's interesting.
What you need to do is, figure out how to be a little more emotionally intelligent before you come and talk to me again. Otherwise, I might just have my minions handle this for me. I'm going to worry about this other stuff that's more important.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
Yes.
So,
well, it just reminds me of like when we would do encounters or freedom weekends and stuff, and then the senior pastor wasn't there the whole time, right? It's like, people paid money to be at this event that the church was putting on to get like spiritual healing, and he's just nowhere to be found, and it was like normal. But then the rare times he would show up to do like a session that was like too heavy, like no one else could do or nobody could do it the right way, or if he happened to show up on like opening night or something, it was like we had to be like, oh my gosh, pastor's here, you guys are getting something so special, pastor's here, like as if it was like a celebrity who showed up. What?
Sorry. It's like we didn't really have to do that. It wasn't like said every time pastor enters the building. It wasn't like all right guys, come on. You know, it was just like we believed, we were duped and believed that he was so special. Mm-hmm. You know, so high. Like, are you sure? You don't have to be here right now. Can I get you something?
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
So
Makes
weird.
me want to spit.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Just a fucking regular old dude. Yeah. Actually, not regular. A narcissistic asshole.
Yeah.
You know? Hey guys, I'm studying. Side note. Hey guys, I'm studying narcissism. It's so interesting. I'm learning so much.
I was like, oh, about yourself? Oh, that's what I was thinking too. Learning for an upcoming series I'm doing about myself.
So glad that I know how to protect myself from these mean narcissists out there. I just... Sorry, I got something coming out of my mouth. Orange peel.
Probably pulp.
Pulp.
Pulp. Extra pulp.
Anyway.
We get medium pulp, to clarify.
Yeah. So, well, I get that for you. I like high pulp.
Oh.
I'm going to chew my orange juice.
Ew. That's gross.
So, Jesus is at the center. Okay. I believe that everyone there genuinely wanted Jesus to be at the center.
Yeah.
Nobody said, we're gonna come up with these cultural values and they're just not gonna know what hit them when we change it up on them.
Yeah.
You know? No, everyone, even the pastors, I think they legitimately believed that Jesus was at the center. But only the, what do you call it? Clergy? What is clergy? That's like church workers?
Yeah.
Only the clergy were allowed to be called out on breaking these values or not abiding by these values. If you called the senior pastors out on not keeping Jesus at the center, or hey, pastor, I love you, but I think you're getting a little off. Mm-hmm. Hell no, dude. Way not okay. You don't do that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where a lot of these cultural values got off. I'm finding it kind of hard to pinpoint on this specific one, like a time where like it was, you know, where Jesus wasn't at the center, so to speak. Like,
well, okay, so I remember what I was gonna say. Sorry. Yeah. I was thinking about how the senior pastors would say often, and then they made us believe, so we would say to other people, how the church wouldn't exist without the head senior pastor. And he was called, and like it would be nothing without him. Absolutely nothing. And I think it's interesting now that we're all gone, and now it's nothing, and he's still there.
He was like put on a pedestal.
I think it's one thing when like people put you on a pedestal, you know, because they admire you. Like I feel like people do that quite often, like with pastors or even like celebrities or people like that. But it's another thing like when you put yourself on a pedestal,
yeah, and
say like, this church would be nothing without me. God called me, you know, and then he only shows up to certain events and like makes himself seem like he's like, you know, so in demand or like so scarce that we're so honored to like be around him. you know? And so I feel like he was trying to put himself on the pedestal for himself.
Yeah. I mean, I do think he did that. I think mostly, though, what he did was allowed himself to be put on a pedestal.
Yeah.
When someone comes and says, "You're the best. You're so awesome. Oh my gosh. Like, I can't believe that you want to have lunch with me. You want me to be on your team." You know, when someone's kissing your butt, typically I feel like what the right thing to do is to say, "Don't." Like, not. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, like if like famous people, you know, someone is like, it's like I feel like a lot of times I see it's humility. You put effort into making people feel like you're on the same level as them. Mm-hmm. You know, especially if you're at the top of the food chain. So you put more effort into making people feel comfortable and welcome and like you're not like above them, but he would welcome that. It would be like, you know, it's like, you know, don't worry about lunch. I got it. And he'd be like, "Oh, thanks."
Yeah.
Like, it's good that you know how to honor.
Yeah.
It's good for you. Like, you know, we're getting off track of the title.
It's okay.
Like, how do you with this one? It's kind of a struggle. I feel like I don't really have anything popping into my mind.
This was the most, the one that I could think of the least examples. Like just off the top of my head. Okay.
I cut you off so bad. I'm sorry.
Yes.
To Blake's family, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I know you want to hear her talk, and I'm hogging the mic all the time. Well, it's funny that this was number one. A religious fucking narcissist would put this at the top of the list. Jesus is the best ever.
Which is funny because they said, like, oh, there's no particular order because one's not more important than the other, but this one is always first.
Yeah. Well, and here's why I say that's interesting. Because I actually feel like most of the other ones were at the center. And Jesus was not at the center.
Yeah.
Saying Jesus is at the center is what you should say as a good Christian.
Right.
But the behavior... Do we have them written down?
They're in the note.
This?
Yeah.
The behavior. So even the cultural values were way more at the center than Jesus.
Yeah.
If it came to being authentic or having Jesus at the center, well, that was a bad one.
If it came to having fun.
Well, I can't wait till we get to being authentic, actually. But my point is like, it's like the cultural values, the 20 commandments. It was like, I got you.
Yeah.
That's why there was so many. We don't want to be limited by I got yous.
So one thing I do think what I was talking about before we turned all the cameras on is relevant. So there were many times where the senior pastor would talk about how when you save someone, when you save them, oh my gosh, that's so funny. When you lead someone to Christ, how you get another jewel on your crown when you're in heaven. So like in heaven, we'd be wearing crowns with jewels on them representing people that we had like led to Christ or something. And I felt like it was so obsessive. Like they like literally like some of them had competitions as to like how many people they could lead to Christ that week. And there's people who like love doing that, and there's people who like that's not really like their thing is going up to random people in Starbucks and be like, do you know the Lord? Or however they, they wouldn't be quite that weird about it. But I feel like the way they became so obsessive about stuff like that, it made it so it wasn't even about Jesus at that point. It was more about like, well, who can have like the most jewels on their crown when they get to heaven, or like who can, save the most people like this year. Like they literally had like a tally going, and maybe it was like real for them. I guess I can't say, for them, but it just felt like it was a lot less about Jesus at that point and more about winning. And I guess in my perspective, like when we get to heaven, if that's what it's really like, and if I have like a tiny crown and some other people have like this huge, crown, if there's no sadness in heaven, then am I going to care that they have like this huge crown and I don't? Like, I really don't think so, And so I feel like that was a big thing that was talked about in regards to like, Jesus and stuff. And I feel like it just made Jesus seem it just wasn't even focusing on who Jesus is and your relationship with him or anything like that. It was like, who can do this the best, the most, and I feel like there's lots of that there in general. But that was just something that I always thought was a little strange, was like, it felt obsessive in a way.
It's kind of ridiculous to me to even say Jesus is at the center is a cultural value, because Jesus being at the center is almost like an invisible aspect of someone's like deepest belief in their heart and core. Jesus is at the center is not a cultural value. I'm just thinking about like beliefs and being a Christian. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like Jesus is at the center. That's only possible if you, as a person, are taking time to seek Jesus out, understand him, like relate to him. You have a relationship with someone you put at the center of your life.
Yeah.
So that's almost in my mind, it's like an eternal process. Jesus being at the center. It's fundamentally conflictive with the second one. You can belong before you believe. Well, if you don't believe, Jesus isn't at the fucking center.
Yeah.
It's contradictory.
Yeah. I think that I hope that the pastors there really wanted Jesus to be at the center. But I think because there was such a lack of accountability in the leadership structure, that just fell short. Because, I don't know, I guess what I feel like Jesus being at the center, like, a big part of that is, like, being open with, like, what you're struggling with and getting help and, like, not, preaching when you're drunk and stuff, And I just think that the way that the whole system was, like, set up allowed that place to be, like, contradictory to Jesus being at the center in the end, And I think maybe once that was all set up, I do believe that was the intention, but I think that got lost along the way because of the whole, there was no other, like, checks and balances, like, put in place. And so then I feel like that was one of the main values that, like, just kind of got lost along the way, I guess. And when the pastors are so focused on making sure people had fun and were doing life together and all these other things, but they weren't making sure, like, in their own heart that Jesus was at the center, and they didn't let other people, like, help them make sure that that was the case either, because they're so high up and there's nobody above them, and we can't speak into their lives, you know, like they spoke into ours. So I think that's kind of where that went askew.
That's the thing with these things. It's like they were pulled out, you know, on occasion, or when it was like when it was an opportunity to really get one over on the people that are, you know, not following you the way you expect, or something. Or it really was just a fucking narcissistic organization, just terrible, unhealthy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it was all about, I'm the anointed and you're my follower. We're building this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, we're building the church. That's what was at the center, building the church. That's crazy. Building the church was at the center. Jesus was not at the center, because if Jesus was at the center, then people would feel loved. But people felt like crap all the time.
Yes.
You know, stressed out, anxious, like terrible. You know, the pastor himself couldn't go to church on Sunday without drinking. Here's what's interesting. I don't even care. Like, you know, if he showed up to preach and like he wanted to have a sip beforehand, like I would have appreciated like him sharing. Yeah. I don't even judge the guy for that. It's like, whatever, dude. Life is hard. You know, Sundays are fucking stressful.
Yeah.
Maybe we've made it that way. I mean, that's debatable, but it is. And so I don't blame the guy. I literally, like, the first or second time I saw him drunk on stage, I went and got a 6-pack after church, went to the river, and I'm drinking, and I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck was that? Like, seriously, like, what's going on with my pastor? You know, he looked drunk. Am I crazy? What is going on? And I was sitting there thinking, and I thought to myself, well, I get drunk all the time. So, not that big of a deal. What I do have a problem with is someone who's drunk at church on Sunday and they say, my doctor said to check out.
Yeah.
I've been checked out by many physicians and I'm doing good, they said. It's not an alcohol problem. I got anxiety. It's like, you're full of shit.
Right.
You know, at least I recognize and try to do something about my issues when I have them. And especially if someone in my life is calling me out on it, you know, I don't laugh at their review on Facebook for speaking the truth. Oh, that's so funny, huh? So funny that this person just devoted 12 years of their fucking life to building your little thing, and then you shit on them and they leave, and now it's so funny, huh? So funny to you.
That's so stupid.
Like, I have a problem with someone being an outright piece of shit asshole. Yeah. And covering up everything they do wrong, acting like so innocent, like, oh, I guess these people just couldn't follow me to my next level. Not gonna sweat it. No, that doesn't apply to you, buddy. It's a little bit different situation. The people in your life left because you're an asshole. You treat them like shit.
Yeah.
Jesus at the center being a cultural value should act as a reminder so that when you are feeling like distracted, like caught up in the busyness of life and stressing out and like, you know, focused on like, oh, I need to provide for my family. Oh, I need to get this project done. Oh, I got to go to the gym. Blah, blah. Oh, wait. Jesus is at the center. I need to focus on Jesus. I need to focus on like praying and worshiping. What's important, all this other stuff will get taken care of. And that's what I feel like a cultural value should do, as opposed to if you're not preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ every day,
yeah,
something's wrong.
right.
We need to work on this. You shouldn't feel bad about any of these.
Right.
And I feel like I felt bad all the time.
I mean, I think the main thing was just what you said, is that no matter like what they said, their actions and our actions said that the church was at the center, not Jesus. And that was the biggest problem, I think.
Yeah.
This is episode 16, where we broke down commandment number 1, Jesus is the center. And the next episode, we will be breaking down commandment number 2, you can belong before you believe.